Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Matters of Faith, the radio show. Matters of Faith is a show designed to bring issues of interest to you, the listening and viewing audience, that will put a biblical perspective on everyday issues. I am your host, the Reverend Dr. J. Lauren Russell, and it is my job to engage you in stimulating dialogue that's inspiring, encouraging, and motivating, dialogue and conversations that will help you build your determination, your commitment, and your character, conversations that will help you keep the faith. Everyone born of God overcomes the world. This is the victory that has overcome the world, even our faith. 1 John chapter 5, verse 4. And now, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, without further ado, it is time for Matters of Faith, the radio show. Well, hello again. It's Monday, May 19th. It's 8 o'clock, and it's time for Matters of Faith, the radio show. I am your host and executive producer, Reverend Dr. J. Lauren Russell, and tonight we're talking about the article and the topic, Exemplary Leadership. Exemplary Leadership. And my very special guest tonight is Reverend Dr. Willard Ashley. Oh, you're going to love this. Make sure you telephone and tell a friend. We're broadcasting live on our Matters of Faith YouTube channel, as well as our Matters of Faith Facebook group, Matters of Faith, as well as the J. Lauren Russell Facebook groups. Telephone and tell a friend. They don't want to miss this production tonight. Exemplary Leadership with Reverend Dr. Willard Ashley. Matters of Faith family, please don't forget to support our sponsors and advertisers, the JLR Company and J. Lauren R. Consulting LLC, for all of your church financial consulting needs. Contact us at jlorenr@jlr.llc. That's jlorenr@jlr.llc. Or simply give us a call, 718-328-8096. 718-328-8096. If you need your trustees to be trained, if you need evangelism training, or if you need to do a financial workshop, if you want to build, grow, or borrow money in order to grow your church, buy your church, please reach out to the JLR Company, J. Lauren R. Consulting LLC, at jlorenr@jlr.llc, or call us 718-328-8096. It's not about the castle. It's about the kingdom. Matters of Faith, the book. You can purchase the book through my Cash App, $ Matters of Faith. The book is $24.15. If you want a hard copy, simply note that. If you want to get a hard copy and you do not use Cash App, please send a check or money order to Post Office Box 301, New York, New York 10035. That's the JLR Company at P.O. Box 301, New York, New York 10035. You can also get it as an ebook. Go to www.smashwords.com/books/view/993177. That's www.smashwords.com/books/view/993-177. Check out the Eat Okra app for all black-owned restaurants and so much more all over the nation. That's right, Eat Okra. Now get your subscription to Better Mag magazine today. A 2-year subscription is only $27.50, and you can get that subscription by going to www.abettermag.com. That's www.abettermag.com. Professional, compassionate, and family-friendly services in time of bereavement. John J. Fox and Sons Incorporated Funeral Services, proudly serving the Bronx community for 125 years. 718-733-9114. 718-733-9114. And don't forget, please subscribe, like, and share our Matters of Faith YouTube channel. Subscribe, like, and share our Matters of Faith YouTube channel. And now, the article, Exemplary Leadership. That article can be found in my column, Matters of Faith, in the Yonkers Insider, www.theYonkersInsider.blogspot.com. That's www.yonkersinsider.blogspot.com. The column is also carried in Better Mag magazine, www.abettermag.com. That's www.abettermag.com. It's also carried in Pamela's Big Heart newsletter, and coming soon, it will be in the Positive Community magazine, www.thepositivecommunity.com. That's www.thepositivecommunity.com. Now, many of you have received a link directly from me to the article. If you have, I pray that you read the article. If not, go to my Facebook page, go to my LinkedIn, go to my Blue Sky. You will find it there. Exemplary leadership. Joshua chapter 1 verse 7, New King James Version. Only be strong and very courageous, being careful to do according to all the law that Moses my servant commanded you. Do not turn from it to the right hand or to the left, that you may have good success wherever you go. Exemplary leadership. On a recent airplane flight, I heard the familiar announcement. In the event of decompression, an oxygen mask will automatically appear in front of you. To start the flow of oxygen, pull the mask towards you. Place it firmly over your nose and mouth, secure the elastic band behind your head, and breathe normally. Although the bag does not inflate, oxygen is flowing to the mask. If you are traveling with a child or someone who requires assistance, secure your mask on first and then assist the other person. Keep your mask on until a uniformed crew member advises you to remove it. Without exception, this announcement is made on every flight regardless of who the carrier might be or how many times you may have flown or heard it. It is repeated as a reminder that there may be unexpected and serious problems during the flight, but that provisions have already been made for your safety and well-being. In life, it is without exception that you will encounter problems. Some minor and others could be life-threatening. But we, like those who fly on airplanes, have an assurance that provisions have already been made for our well-being. We have reminders that provisions have already been taken that will help us to make it through the most trying and difficult of circumstances. Joshua was being installed as the head of the nation of Israel after the death of Moses, and for the first time, the Lord speaks directly to him. He spoke words of encouragement and told him that he would successfully bring this nation of people into the promised land. He also told him what he needed to do to achieve that success. The Lord didn't tell him anything that he didn't already know. He just refreshed his memory and reassured him that he would be successful if he followed the instructions given to him first by Moses, now by God himself. Unlike Moses, who died before getting into the promised land, the Lord tells Joshua that his leadership would be successful if he was careful to observe and follow all that he is being instructed to do. A friend told me that he was on a flight and the cabin did lose its pressure. The mask did drop down. The passengers all followed the instructions that they had been given, but the flight attendant forgot to put her mask on first and was overcome by a lack of oxygen. Just because we know what we are supposed to do, and even if we are the ones giving the instruction, does not mean that we will do it. Stressful or unusual circumstances and situations can cause us to forget or ignore our training. Like Moses and the flight attendant, we have our instructions, and we know what's expected of us, even if we are stressed or in unusual situations. Joshua guided the Israelites into the promised land through prudent decision-making and adherence to divine guidance. Allow me to draw upon the words of encouragement bestowed upon Joshua by the Lord. Be strong and of good courage. Do not be afraid nor be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. Verse 9. I sincerely hope and pray that we will emulate Joshua's exemplary leadership. Be blessed. And here's my question tonight. What are some characteristics of exemplary leadership? Let me ask it again. What are some characteristics of exemplary leadership? And now, Matters of Faith family, it really does give me a great deal of pleasure to introduce to some and then to present to others my very special guest this evening, Reverend Dr. Willard Ashley Sr., who was born and raised in Harlem, New York, proud product of the New York City public school system, who played Little League Baseball for the Harlem YMCA and the Henry Hudson Little League. Ashley was a small forward for the FIT Community College and left a career in corporate to pursue a career in ministry and mental health. At present, Ashley is the president and CEO of Dr. Willard Ashley Sr. LLC, and under this umbrella, he runs a private practice in psychoanalysis in Upper Montclair, New Jersey. Ashley also conducts consults with corporations and leads seminars globally. He's a dynamic figure leading the Abundant Joy Community Church in Jersey City, New Jersey, and brings over 4 decades of dedicated service in the ordained ministry. Beyond the pulpit, Ashley is an esteemed clinical fellow in the American Association of Marriage and Family Therapists. His influence extends to academia, where he contributes as a board member of Andover Newton Seminary at Yale Divinity School and as a retired professor of pastoral theology at New Brunswick Theological Seminary. Dr. Ashley made history as the first African American dean at NBTS, setting a powerful example for future generations. He imparts his wisdom at the NYU School of Social DSW program, showcasing his diverse experiences. An accomplished author, Dr. Ashley's literary works enrich the world with profound insights and innovative perspectives, reflecting his unwavering dedication to uplifting others. He is a proud fan of the New York Yankees and the finals candidate, the New York Knicks. So, Matters of Faith family, would you welcome with me this evening my very special guest and friend, Reverend Dr. Willard Ashley Sr. Hey, my brother, how are you? Good evening.
Hey, good evening. I'm good. How about you?
I'm doing well, thank you. And thank you for
Good.
allowing me to introduce you with all that fanfare and stuff like that because really want people to know who you are because you are
Well,
an
thank
important
you.
person.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for being with us tonight. Listen, by the way, I did the bio thing. I read that, but tell us something about you that we don't know and we really should know.
Well, you're talking about leadership. And so I think would be important to talk about leadership that I grew up in Harlem. We moved from Harlem from 41 Convent Avenue, it was 129th Street, and ended up on Sugar Hill.
Mm-hmm.
And it was living between Broadway and Amsterdam. We could walk to the Polo Grounds. That kind of dates me, but that tells you like uh we could also walk to Yankee Stadium. And we had there was a disco back then, back in the 70s, late 60s, called the Devil's Inn. And it was kids coming, young adults going to dance. That part was okay,
Mm-hmm.
but it was the drugs
Mm.
and the robberies they brought into our neighborhood. And so that was my first experience of exemplary leadership because there was a neighborhood woman, we'd say she was the elder matriarch of the neighborhood named Mrs. Parks. And Mrs. Parks organized us and said, not in our neighborhood. And we recognized that we were up against some really influential and powerful folks that
Mm.
don't play fair. And so the fear was real, the anxiety was real. And people may not remember, but back in the 70s, you may remember this as well. New York, Manhattan, and Bronx in particular was known for police corruption.
Yes, sir.
There was a movie, Serpico, that
Mm-hmm.
talked about his experience with that. And where we lived, it was so bad, it was called the Dirty 30. That was the name of the 30th precinct at that time. And fast forward just a little bit, they transferred the entire precinct. It was so bad. And we knew that somehow they were involved in some way with this Devil's End operating, yada, yada, yada. Mrs. Parks organized us.
Mm.
And again, against some really powerful entities, we got it to close and to move someplace else and to return our neighborhood back to us. And back then, you played stickball in the street. Two
Mm-hmm.
sewers was a home run.
Mm-hmm.
You played touch football, one Mississippi, two Mississippis. And so, life wasn't perfect. Yeah, we had to deal with people coming back from Vietnam and crack, well, back then, heroin addicts and all that kind of stuff. And, your friends steal your TV, say, hey, that looks like my TV in your house. Oh, no, 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 that's not, we went through that period. We went through that period. But for the most part, we were a community and we were a neighborhood and everyone knew each other. You knew the quote unquote bad kids, you knew the good kids, the police lived in your neighborhood, the firefighters. So that was an illustration
Mm.
of exemplary leadership that my school teacher lived around the corner. Wow. Officer so and so lived down the street. you saw the firefighter in the same supermarket with you. And
Mm.
so it wasn't just that something that you read, but you got to see leadership by their daily life.
Yeah.
When the uniform came off, this is how Officer so and so spends his or her time.
Mm.
When there's nobody else around, there's no students, you can see your teacher jogging in Riverside Drive Park. And so that was one of my early examples of leadership. I bring up in the bio about the Harlem YMCA and the Henry Hudson Little League
Hmm.
because I'm convinced that people that engage in team sports have a different appreciation about life and about leadership. I remember one of the early painful lessons was learning how to lose gracefully,
Mm.
which, not knowing one day I'd become a pastor and how important it was as a pastor to learn how to lose gracefully when the vote went so bad against you. Like, wow. And so but that was an important lesson, learning how to lose gracefully and being gracious. And and it's something that we kind of struggle with today that's one of my pet peeves. I'm try not to stay there too long.
Hmm.
But my heart breaks for people trying to raise young children right now because so many of the values that we grew up on seem to be under attack. I don't want to beat you because you were injured and I injured you. I want to beat you because at your best, you were better than my best.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I got to spend the next summer getting better than you, going to the gym, doing more push-ups, more sit-ups, shooting more, swinging more, whatever, so that next year when I play you, I'm going to be better than you.
Mm.
That doesn't seem to be the mindset. Oh, we won because you got injured and I injured you, and oh man, so we're the champions. That never sat well with me. Again, I want to say I beat you at your best on your best day, and on your best day, my best day was better than yours.
Right, right. Naturally, my ability superseded yours. I did my homework.
Yeah, yeah.
You said some things because yeah, I remember the 70s very well because I grew up in the 70s as well. I'm gonna tell you something about the Dirty 30 that I do
Hmm.
know. And this is interesting. This will add to your historical perspective of that. Dr. John Luster Scott, you know Dr.
Hmm.
Scott.
Hmm. Hmm.
Dr. Scott was very instrumental in helping to rid the Dirty 30 of those dirty police officers. He
Okay.
created a movement that essentially galvanized the community against the Dirty 30 and brought it to light. And so his reputation became well known in the police department.
Mm.
Now, now it's been a couple of years, but there was a gentleman named Chief Miguel Iglesias who
Mm.
became the chief of the internal affairs.
Hmm.
And I know Chief Iglesias.
Hmm.
And so he decided that he was going to bring the internal affairs out of the darkness and bring it into the light so people would know more about it. So he was
Okay.
having these meetings around the city to
Hmm.
get people together to talk about internal affairs and what they do.
Hmm.
So he had a meeting in the Bronx. I live in the Bronx. I still live in the Bronx.
Okay. Okay.
And so I went to the meeting. He knew me. He recognized me. Of course, we talked, and he began to talk about what John Scott did at the Dirty 30. And he says, I've never met the man, but man
Hmm.
says, but I'm making a pattern for the internal affairs after what he did to clean out the Dirty 30.
Okay.
And I stood up and said, Chief Iglesias, you mean John Luster Scott, Reverend Dr. John Luster Scott?
Mm.
He's a personal friend of mine.
Hmm.
I said, in fact, I am currently, and I was at the time, the president of the John Luster Scott Associate Ministers Auxiliary of the United Missionary Baptist Association. Would you like to talk to him? And
Okay.
so
Okay.
he's retired and he moved to
Okay.
the South. I reached out and touched bases with him. We had a meeting. We had a meeting. It was a Zoom meeting with
Okay.
Dr. Scott, and you should have seen Chief Iglesias. He was like a child in a candy store. He was so excited, and Dr.
Sure.
Scott's memory of history is amazing.
Okay.
So he talked about all the particulars that they went through and how they were able to rid the 30th precinct of those corrupt cops.
Okay.
And it was an amazing because you mentioned that. And I
Yeah.
said, I was just at St. John's Church yesterday
No.
because they got a new pastor who's a friend
Right,
of
right.
mine as well. Yeah, you know, Dr. Um, Reverend Dr. Come on now, I know name as well as I do my own. Kimberly Holmes,
It'll come to us.
Reverend Dr. Kimberly Holmes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
She's now the pastor.
Okay.
And Dr. Holmes, if you're not, Dr. Holmes is an attorney. She's also a sitting judge
Okay.
in New Jersey. So she's now the pastor of St. John's
Okay.
Baptist Church. And so
Okay.
you said
So
that,
you
and
so you
boy,
brought it up. You have to connect us. You have to introduce
yes,
us.
yes, yes. So all of
Okay.
those pieces come together. And I grew up in the South Bronx. I grew up living in the 42nd precinct, right, which was adjacent to Fort Apache.
So that's another story because
Absolutely.
my godfather,
Hmm.
Brad Brewer, was the sergeant at that precinct.
Which one? The Fort Apache?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he wasn't on the take, which was incredible at that particular time.
Mm.
So what did they do? They sent him in first on a drug bus and he got
Mm.
killed.
Wow. Wow.
So we have stories. So it was kind of like, on the one hand, you got, the good cops,
Right.
and you got the bad cops,
Right.
and wait, and I'm going to the police athletic league.
Right. Right. Well,
where where
I didn't go to the police athletic league at all because the closest one was down by Longwood Avenue, and I lived on Boston Road. We weren't going on.
okay,
We just went to
okay,
Forest House Projects, and that's
okay,
where I studied. And I didn't play organized sports, but I studied the martial arts.
okay.
So I did that at Forest House
So you
Project.
remember Moses Gunn back in the day.
Oh, I sure do. Sure do. Fred Miller. My
Hmm.
sensei was Roy Solomon.
Hmm.
Mr. Yates and Mr.
Yep,
McBride. Yep.
yep.
All of them.
Wait,
Yes.
and got a bunch of black kids doing the duck walk. Like, why are we doing
Yeah,
this?
yeah, yeah. In fact, one of my good friends, Derek Williams, I know he won't mind me mentioning his name. He still practices the martial art, and we started over 50 years ago.
Oh yeah, it had to be at least that long.
Yep. And he is, I mean, I asked him, he's been my guest on this program many times. I said, how many world championships have you won?
Hmm.
His answer amazed me. He said, I stopped counting when I got to 5,000.
There was a brother that lived in my building named Bobby Slayton, and he went to
Ah.
Olympics on martial arts.
Hmm.
And he had some teeth missing in the front. And we're like, what happened? He said, I won the match.
But I
I was
lost my
walking
teeth.
back to my corner, and the dude kicked me just because I won.
Oh man. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so the lesson was there, always be on guard. Growing up in the hood, you're supposed to be, but he says,
Absolutely.
even in these organized
You know that's
things,
right. You know
yeah, you
that's right.
always got to be in. Because I won the match. I'm walking back to my corner. The dude didn't like losing. He gave me a spinning heel kick, and they want the
Wow.
teeth.
Wow. Wow. So he was already out, so it didn't matter because they,
Yeah, right.
oh yeah, he
Yeah,
had nothing to lose.
right.
That's
What, you
terrible.
can't come back in 4 years?
Right,
Gee,
right.
gee,
That's
yeah.
terrible. That's terrible.
Yeah.
That's terrible. Lose your teeth after you win the match.
After you won the match.
After
Right,
you win
right,
the
right.
match.
Yeah.
But that's what happens. You talked about it too. You talked about competition versus disabling someone and then
Hmm.
winning the contest because you have done something dirty to put yourself in
Hmm.
a better position. And that's what happens. The integrity levels, the
Hmm.
integrity that people have today versus what they had then, even to the extent, I'm sure you read about it. There was a 14-year-old kid who shot and killed a 16-year-old girl the other
Hmm.
day in the precinct that I, by the way, am the precinct council president at the
Okay.
42nd precinct. So
Okay.
think about full circle, right? I was the kid that they used to chase all over the place. Me
Hmm.
and my friends, now I'm the sitting president of the same
Hmm.
precinct that I
Hmm.
grew up in because I
Okay.
still live in the same neighborhood.
Okay.
I'm still in the South Bronx. I'm still
Hmm.
I tell people I'm from the South Bronx, and I'm still here. Born in Harlem Hospital, but raised in the South Bronx. And
Okay.
so, it was interesting that this happened. This 14-year-old kid shoots a 16-year-old girl, kills her, she's dead. A 13-year-old kid handed him the gun that he used to
Hmm.
shoot. There was a fight that took place before the shooting between the 14-year-old and another. The 14-year-old won the fight. Somebody came up afterwards that was not the person that he fought
Hmm.
and sucker punched him,
Oh.
knocked him to the ground. So his friend gives him this gun. He turns around and shoots at the guy who hit him. He misses that guy and hits a 16-year-old.
Yeah.
Those are the kinds of challenges that we have to figure out a way to deal with so that the gun or the disabling or hurting someone is not the normal response. That
Right.
can't be the response anymore
Right. Right.
because now we've lost three people.
Right.
We've lost the 16-year-old, the 14-year-old, and the 13-year-old that handed him the gun.
Hmm.
And then their families. So
Hmm.
nobody wins. Everybody
Right.
loses.
Right.
Everybody loses. And that's what we have to stop. And that's kind of like that exemplary leadership that we have to develop in those young people that they can then carry with them through life so that they'll be like us talking about what it was then and how they
Right.
were able to get through.
And one of the and that is extremely sad, and heart goes out to the families that are involved in the community, how it's impacted that community. Um, Horrific story.
Yep.
I've On the other side of that, I've had conversations with young, mostly dudes.
Hmm.
Y'all can't shoot. You do get
Oh,
that
you know
point,
that's
right?
right, man.
I needed a gun that had 6 bullets and I had 5 left over.
Wow.
You
Wow.
y'all got Uzis and still hit the wrong people.
Yeah,
Come on, y'all.
I call them the gang that can't shoot straight, but you
Yeah,
want to shoot.
yeah,
You want to shoot
yeah,
everything.
yeah.
You're not going to the range and practicing and learning how to shoot the gun. You watch TV and you try to do it like on TV, like this. You can't shoot. That's not the way you. So,
Like I said, our gun said 6 bullets. We had 5 left over.
right, 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 right. Unbelievable,
Yeah.
unbelievable.
But
So,
it does again it reflects to society. It's not just our young people. You see the road rage in on steroids right now in the last
mhm,
couple of months, if not the
mhm,
last few years.
right,
You see the aggression in the supermarket.
right.
It's yeah. Anyway, it's great for my business though, but it's bad. It's
Yeah. Speaking of
bad.
that's an interesting point because I actually as you were saying that, and I'm glad that you brought that up. I wanted to ask you a question about this because I'm doing some work with the district attorney's office,
Okay.
working with young people who are
Hmm.
involved in serious crimes.
Hmm.
And we want it has to include a family component.
Hmm.
And I said, well, you know what? I said, my guest tonight is going to be someone that I can ask, what kind of how can a program be created that actually incorporates the family so that there's multiple trainings going on so that it's reinforced at home and not just with the child. Because if they get
So,
home, it's not
yeah,
reinforced, it doesn't make any difference.
right. So, in full disclosure and transparency, they may not be appreciated, but if it's the Bronx District Attorney's Office, we were in conversations about that question about a year or two ago, and they wanted to do it a little differently. So I said, okay, God bless you. Hope it works out for you.
Mm,
Um, I think I have something at this stage in age in my life that would work,
hmm.
and I'd be more than happy to reopen the conversation
Okay.
and to look at that. Because very few of us, and I'm not saying this out of narcissistic space, have come out of the hood, survived the hood,
Right.
and now we're writing books and teaching.
Right.
And too many people are so disconnected from the reality of living in the hood that it's theoretical, not practical. It's overly academic and doesn't take into consideration the multiple layers of living in quote unquote urban neighborhoods that are under attack from both ends of the candle, so to speak. And so and it's fascinating to watch this dynamic that people who get paid six figures and more, who write books and all of that stuff, don't understand where we live.
Right.
And it's clear. And to their detriment, they get beat every time because they don't get that as bad as things may look, we are still a community.
Mm.
And even in these suburban neighborhoods where I live in one, it's not community.
Mm.
It's a place where you go change clothes,
Wow.
where you park your luxury car and know it's going to be outside when you leave.
Wow.
But the neighbors don't know each other. They don't care about each other. And it's isolationist. I take care of my little plot of land, you take care of yours. Unless you put up something I don't like, then have a
Mm.
nice life. And I don't want to know. Not that
Right.
I don't know, and I don't want to know. In an urban neighborhood, as you know this, the ecology is different.
Yep. Yep.
Even the drug dealers look out for you if they know you're helping the community.
Absolutely.
I
Absolutely.
mean, I can't tell you how many times I would go into certain neighborhoods and they would laugh and say, Rev, you're embarrassing us. You gotta wash your car, dude. Your car. Oh, wait, I come downstairs. Not only is there four hubcaps, they wash the car.
Right. Right.
It's like,
Right.
Rev, come on, represent. You come rolls me in a dirty car.
Right.
And they don't appreciate, particularly in New York City, particularly in northern New Jersey spaces, before I get out my car, they saw my car 3 blocks down the road.
Mm.
They had the binoculars. They knew exactly what my license plate and they knew, oh, it's Rev, we're good. And as you
Mhm.
know, sometimes they would say, Rev, can you do this visit a little later? This may not be the best time for you to come.
Right.
Got it. Visit later.
Right.
Got it. Okay.
Right.
At
Right.
the same time, and I've struggled with this as a psychoanalyst and as a coach for clergy, that sometimes we have been misdiagnosed
Mm.
as being overly anxious.
Mm.
And I'm like, so let me help you understand this. This brother, this sister got on the elevator with the urine smell and the blood in the elevator at 2 in the morning after somebody's kid got mistakenly killed to pray with the family.
Mm.
And you and I know every time that elevator door opens, your heart is like, okay, who's going to be on the other side of this door when it opens? So I want to celebrate the pastor, the clergy person that goes in the neighborhood at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock to pray with a family that's bereaved. And yeah, they probably have some anxiety issues, and you would too, because you wouldn't even get out the car to go into the building, go to the
Right.
20th floor.
Right.
Okay. So
Right.
yeah. So stop, stop. Yeah. So there's that. But again, it's just a misunderstanding or not appreciating what it means to
Mm.
work in these neighborhoods. And I applaud you for being in the South Bronx. I applaud all of our clergy people who may or may not live in the neighborhood anymore. I guess another conversation,
Hmm.
but who
Hmm.
still work in the neighborhood and still provide services and still provide ministry and still provide leadership.
Right. Right.
And we need more Reverend Dr. John Scotts. Because when you read the part about in Joshua, the two things that stuck out, and this is my rant, so I'll try to bring it in, is to be strong and courageous.
Yes.
You can't teach that in seminary.
Right.
You can't take a course on courageous 101 and strength 101. You have to have it or you don't. And unfortunately, too many times, too many of our colleagues are not being strong and they're not being courageous.
Right. Yeah, and you're right, because a lot of times what I hear is a lot of rhetoric.
Yeah.
But I know because when um I was doing something with the police department called Ceasefire. I don't know if you ever heard of it or not, but it was an effort, joint effort, community, police, sheriffs, ATF. I mean, just a collaboration of stuff
Hmm.
to stop the violence in the community.
Hmm.
And so they invited clergy to come and to participate, you
Hmm.
know. And so one of the things that you do is go and you would go with the police and others to go
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
doors of the people who
Hmm.
were identified, if you
Hmm.
will, of being a part of the gangs, crews, cliques, or whatever they call
Hmm.
themselves,
Hmm.
and deliver a very difficult message,
Yeah.
but also offer. services like
Hmm.
like I've never seen before. Anything you need, whatever you might need, they'll help you to get it. Whatever it is.
Okay.
I don't care if you need a job, you need to relocate, you got baby mama drama, you need
Hmm.
psychological, whatever it is, they'll help you to get it. I've never seen that before. That's what drew me to it.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so when I've talked to my colleagues and I said, hey, come on, let's do this.
Hmm. Hmm.
They were saying, no, because it would then they would think I'm working with the police.
Right.
It's like, well, wait, hold on, time out, time out. If it saves a life and you don't have to do a funeral service, you're
Hmm.
more concerned about the way people might see you in the community as opposed to saving the life of someone who might take a life or be,
Right.
the victim of someone taking their life or injuring
Right.
them and they'll never walk again. I mean, what's the priority for you? And what I saw was that there was a very few people who would do it, very few.
Hmm.
And then
Hmm.
we had these community, we would bring in guys on probation and parole and give them a similar message, but it was in a closed-in environment, so to speak.
Hmm.
And so, they asked me to be the moderator. So yeah, I'd be honored to do that. Now I can control the environment.
Hmm.
And I said, the community is saying the violence has got to stop.
Right.
But when I looked at the people who were in the community who was at the meeting, they were not sitting in those seats. They were not there.
Hmm. Hmm.
So when I'm saying that the community is saying we don't want any more violence and it's got to stop, but you don't want to show up, then
Right.
that's a problem.
Right.
That's a problem. How can you
Right.
say you don't want it, but you don't want to present yourself as one who says, I'm not going to stand for this anymore, and I'm going to stand with you. I'm not against you. I'm standing with you. What do you need? We'll help you to get it. If you need work, if you need a job, you need somebody, you want a mentor, you need somebody to stand by you, stand with you. I'm
Hmm.
here for
Hmm.
you.
Hmm.
That's what communities do. That's what we did when I
Right.
was growing up, right?
Absolutely.
People across the
Absolutely.
street, my friend's mother saw me going through something. She came and stood beside me, said, "Hey, are you okay?
Hmm.
Are you okay? Come into the house. Come here. Come here. Come here. Come inside. Come inside. Sit down for a minute. Get your head together.
Hmm.
Get your head together.
Absolutely.
Because you're doing, what you're about to do is wrong. They didn't have to be my mama. They didn't have to be my
Right.
aunt. They had just somebody in the community that saw me and knew me. And maybe they didn't even know me, but they saw me and they knew that
Hmm.
I was a kid from the community and they cared about me. And that's what I'm not seeing anymore, that there's not a level of care that's emanating from the community for our own
Hmm.
people.
Yeah.
And that's what's scary.
And they did that without cell phones, by the way.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Right. Nothing. I mean, when it was time for us to come upstairs, my mother would put her head out the window, say,
Hmm.
come upstairs. And she didn't have
Hmm.
to call your name because everybody
Right.
knew their mother's voice.
Exactly.
Everybody. Hey,
Exactly.
your mom's calling you, man.
Hmm.
Remember the song, Hey
Exactly.
Leroy, what? Your mama,
Exactly.
she calling you, man. You know.
Exactly.
So that's the way it worked in our time, and that's the way, we built communities, even though we saw and the changes that came when the drugs came into the community. And now all of a sudden, instead of people helping older people across the street and with their groceries from the supermarket, they were stealing them and snatching their pocketbooks.
Hmm.
They
Hmm.
had feed that
Yeah.
monkey that was on their back.
And then you had the
That's
brothers that came back from Vietnam, and they were not
exactly,
getting the help they needed as well. So
exactly,
that was
exactly.
another, yeah.
Right. Whole nother story. And that's what happened. I remember my uncle served in Vietnam and he came home and he was a different guy. He was my
Yeah.
favorite
Yeah.
uncle. He's a
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
guy. And I was like,
Yeah.
man, what happened? I wanted to be Ray. It was
Yeah.
my favorite
Yeah.
uncle.
Yeah.
But then, he just kind of kept going down and down and didn't get what he needed. In fact, he went back to Vietnam 3 times
Wow.
because he could get what he needed over there. And he used heroin. I didn't know he used heroin, but he could get it there. And they treated him like he was a man over there.
Hmm. Hmm.
Came home
Yeah.
and they disrespected him all over again,
Yeah. You
So,
mentioned the name Ray, different person, but my cousin Ray Chu grew up in the Grant Projects and his family moved to the Bronx.
hmm,
And Ray now is music director, Dancing with the Stars, did the Macy's Day Parade,
hmm,
the Macy's fireworks and all that. But bringing it up because his mom, Elaine Chu, used to work with a Dr. Thelma Adair.
hmm.
who was one of the few women, maybe the only one that has her picture at Columbia University in the teachers college
Mm,
among all the great white men. There's a
mm-hmm,
picture, portrait of Dr. Thelma Dare.
mm.
Well, I was at a point probably 13, 15, where I could have gone either way. And my parents recognized that. And so I spent a summer with Elaine Chu and
Wow,
Dr. Thelma Adair.
wow.
And we were at one of the brownstones on 140 something in Convent
Mm,
Avenue for the whole summer. And I remember the theme was I'm no fool, I'm going to stay in school.
mm, mm.
And that got me through that period of which direction am I going to go in life. So nope, I'm no fool, I'm going to stay in school. And that helps keep me focused. Um, and then I kept going to school and going to school and never stopped. That's another conversation. But okay, you did your job. You got it. Okay, I'm gonna stay in school. No fool. Got it. Okay.
But that's an amazing story all by itself, that there was that person there who was able to intercede. Last week we were talking about that, in terms of somebody stepping in when someone else couldn't do it,
Hmm.
and being the bridge that brings people from one side to the other.
Hmm.
And people did that, and we
Yeah.
need to do that yet again. We have not been doing that on a regular basis. Uh, some people have, but not nearly as many as we need in our communities to do what we need to get done.
Well, you remember we went to the park and there was always some guy that used to play in the NBA or didn't make it to the NBA
Yeah,
who
yeah,
was the park and we all looked up to that person. He would tell
yeah,
us stories about, his failure
yeah.
and how
Well,
don't do like I
Harlem
did.
had a lot more than we did, but we did have a few. In fact, one of the guys now, I remember him well. He was a community legend because he played with Tiny Archibald and
Okay.
Archibald made it. He didn't,
Okay.
he got caught up in the drug scene.
Okay.
And so I met him. You know where I met him at? Union Baptist Church.
No.
Union Baptist Church.
Wow.
And so we began to talk, and he said, "Well, I grew up in the Bronx and now." And then he told me his name. When he told me his name, because he's a few years older than I am, so he was the
Okay.
legend, right? The
Hmm.
basketball legend. And I said, "Oh my God!" He said, well, I got excited. I was like, "Yo, I know who
Yeah.
you are." And we
Hmm.
started talking. We become great friends. I've seen him so many times since then,
Okay.
But it's amazing because they did leave this legacy, right?
Oh
And he
yeah.
was one that didn't make it. I had a cousin that actually made the NBA. He played with the 76ers and he was from
Okay.
Harlem. He was from
Okay.
Harlem. And so, we Roger Wells actually is his name, but we had some people who were doing those kinds of things and they were making their way up. And then of course, we had others who were, being paid on the street.
Hmm. Hmm.
They were being paid. The drug dealers were paying them to play ball on the street. They
Hmm.
were playing at the
Hmm.
Rucker, and I mean,
Hmm.
amazing athletes, amazing athletes.
Hmm.
And so, those kinds of things took place as well. And as you talk about it, it reminded me that back in the day, remember the night census that they had?
Absolutely.
You
Yeah.
know, one of my cousins.
Kept us out of trouble.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
One of my cousins' husbands, he ran one of the night centers here in the South Bronx. It was our junior high school.
Hmm.
So of course I got special privileges because it's my cousin's husband, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
we got, I mean, it was so wonderful. And one of my friends tells me, I do not remember this. I do not remember this, but he tells me that it happened. There was a couple of gangs that were there at the time. I think
Hmm.
Black Spades or whatever,
Hmm.
Black Pearls, whatever. And so they were about to fight. Now
Hmm.
I had personality. I knew everybody. And he tells me that I stepped in and convinced them that they shouldn't fight. And they didn't.
I could believe that. I could believe that.
Well,
Again, different culture. You remember if you could play sports and or they thought you were going to be somebody,
right,
it was hands off.
right, right. Exactly, exactly.
And
Right,
I remember
right,
that boy got a nice jump shot. No, leave him
right,
alone. No, he dunked on so and so. No, 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 no.
right.
Yeah, so and so's at Columbia University learning to be a physician. So, hands off. That was the mindset then.
That
We
was
don't
the
have
mindset.
that
That's
now. We
right.
don't have that now.
Nope, nope. Nope.
So and so is a Juilliard, so leave her alone. She's gonna be
Mhm.
something one day. So,
Right.
you may mess her up, don't leave. No, she's off limits. In fact, if you
Right.
mess with her, we're gonna jump you and beat your
Right.
butt.
It was
So
like Aquila and the Bee, right? Remember the
yeah,
movie
yeah,
Aquila
yeah,
and the
yeah,
Bee?
yeah.
Like everybody became her teacher.
Right.
The whole community, whether you were selling drugs or not, everybody became her teacher because she was somebody special, and everybody just knew she was
Hmm.
somebody special.
Yeah.
And
So
so,
so
yeah,
there was again, it was a different space, different mindset.
I wonder. It's interesting you should say that because there has to be a way to recapture some of that, to sort of bring that because it's in people to do that. It's in us. It's innate. But how do we
Hmm.
get it out? How do we get it
So some
out?
some of it is the sociological construct that for many of us, you need two incomes plus just for standard of living. We're not
Mm,
talking about luxury, not talking about, the things and stuff, just kind of basic luxury, basic living.
right,
And so too often by the time the parents get home, they're exhausted.
right. That's true.
And to do
That's true.
extracurricular stuff is like, whoa, anyone to do this too? Like, yeah, and I'm taking all my little bit of energy just to get to work every day and make it back home. And as
Mm,
you know, the oldest child ends up doing the cooking
right.
and comes to surrogate parent in a very real way. Um, I had this very scary experience. I'll try to say it in a way that doesn't get either one of us in trouble. But I was speaking to some people that have influence in the community, and I was amazed that they were quick to talk about these mothers that don't stay home.
Hmm.
And I said, there's a group of women that you're right, they don't stay home. That's a different category. But there are other women that I gather you put in the same pot. They're not home because they're working three jobs.
Hmm.
They're not home because the bus didn't stop and they had to wait for the next bus to get to work late to talk about why you're late for work today. They're not making six figures,
Hmm.
but they got two or three kids to take care of, and they're trying their darndest not to be under public roles.
Right.
So that's why they work
Right.
more than one job. That's why they're taking the bus in 6 inches of snow
Hmm.
that doesn't stop. That's why they're walking in the dark because the guys shot the lights out for different conversation,
Hmm.
and they're walking in the dark at 4 o'clock in the morning to get to work to flip burgers, whatever the case may be. So just because somebody isn't home doesn't mean they're out there partying and looking for the next baby
Right.
daddy.
Right. Right.
In fact, oftentimes they are working more than one job, doing more than one thing, and trying to be a responsible citizen. There was a meeting of a public housing project in our neighborhoods, and they brought one of the directors, and they were asking from some changes and demands in public housing.
Mm-hmm.
And the person said, well, if you people paid your rent, we would be okay. And we asked, before you came out to meet, did you check your record? No, 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 no. It says, well, had you checked your records, you'd have found, at least in this particular project, 90% of the people do pay their rent
Hmm.
and on time.
Hmm.
Going back to what I said earlier about not understanding our neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm.
And you know this, that for folks of a certain age from the South primarily,
Mm-hmm.
being able to pay your bills is a source of pride.
Yep. No doubt.
And so to say that you didn't pay your bill, like, whoa, 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 whoa. No, 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 no. And I had to teach younger clinicians that when so-and-so says, can I pay you cash? That's what they want to say. I did what I had, you did your service, I
Mm-hmm.
paid you, we're good. We're good. And so again, that understanding our community that we like to be self-sufficient. We like to be independent, but we also understand that there are resources that can help improve our neighborhood. And so we have to avail ourselves to those resources.
Hmm.
It's not doesn't make us impoverished, doesn't make us, a problem per se. It's what's available to us. And
Right.
why not expose, again, it's kind of if we're in the same kind of age category, we went to museums, we want to see the opera, whether we liked it or not. Because that was part of, New York City school
Mm-hmm.
experience
Mm-hmm.
to expose us to as many different things, and you choose later on in life which way you want to land. but at least to be exposed to these things so you have an understanding of them. We knew classical music. Again, may or may not like it, but at least you knew the song. Like, oh, that's the 1812 overture. I know that one. That's
Right.
the this, that's
Right.
the that,
Well,
Yeah.
it's interesting, right? Because if you watch cartoons, you would learn them
Right. Right.
because they used them in cartoons.
Correct.
And I was a
Correct.
cartoon freak, so I was like, oh, I know
Yeah.
that song.
Yeah.
The Blue
Exactly.
Man U, do 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 do
Hmm.
do. Because they used
Exactly.
them in different cartoons, and you got
Right.
used to that. You heard it.
Right.
So when you heard it in the context in which it was written, like at a concert,
Right.
so, oh, I know that song, and you could
Exactly.
identify, which was really good. And you just said something that really interesting that just really popped in my mind, and I got to keep this in mind too. You talked about cultural awareness, being aware of
Hmm.
the culture, going to the museums and going to different places, exposing yourself to the New York experience, unlike any other place in the world, right? When I was in public school, in the third grade no, fourth grade in particular. Was it the fourth grade? No, fifth grade.
Hmm.
Mr. Berger, he was really into culture,
Hmm.
and they had a budget for this in the schools back then.
Hmm. Hmm.
There was not, I don't think that a week went by that we didn't go to some museum or some
Hmm.
historical place in New York City. We went
Hmm.
to, I think when we went to the Statue of Liberty, I was sick that week and couldn't go.
Hmm.
Other than that,
Yeah.
every major every major facility in New York we went to,
Absolutely.
including the cloisters.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you make a very good point. I don't know where you stand on this. This is my disclaimer. This is my personal opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I never was in favor of learning about Black history in public school system because I think it's the job of the parents to do that. 'Cause I think we can do a better job of it than have someone telling from a district, here's what you will teach, here's what you won't teach about it. And so to your point, I'm gonna be very clear. My dad had a fourth grade formal education.
Mm,
Watley, Georgia, in the military, rest his soul in Calverton in Long Island. But he made sure we had more than enough homework.
mm,
Over the summers, we had Will Ashley's reading lists.
mm,
We had to write book reports.
mm,
To our dad, we said, "Well, school, no, that's the school I'm talking about. You got to write me a book report. I want you to read that." Like, whoa. He would make us read two or three newspapers in the morning, New York
mm.
Times, Daily News, the Post, and then talk about it, the current events. So we were up to date. Of course, we're talking about the sports pages too, but we
Right,
had to talk
right,
about
right, right.
world events, et cetera. And to your point, we went to the museums. We took advantage of the rich cultural heritage that New York City has to offer.
Mm-hmm.
To this day, I do not get how, it's particularly our seminaries that train clergy, but it's beyond that, above that, how they don't partner with the very many institutions that run the world.
Mm, mm,
Seminaries don't partner with Wall Street. I
mm.
don't get it. They don't partner with Juilliard or Manhattan School of Music. I just don't get it. They don't partner with Sony to help
Mm.
people understand, master classes and
Right,
doing mixing
right,
and doing
right,
video, et cetera,
right.
et cetera, et cetera. And I'm like, I guess that's why I'm not a president, but that's another conversation. But I just don't get, I don't get it. And so for the hot minute I was on BET, I was amazed that NBC and other stations reached out and said,
Mm.
"Hey, we noticed this. If you have your camera do this, or have a little tweak that do this, or I know you got this kind of a camera. If you add this to it, this kind of mixing board," and they would donate stuff
Wow. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they were just so excited. Like, wow, you on BET. Like, hey, we want you to have a
Right.
good product, so
Right.
we
Right.
will help you.
Right. Right.
And I'm sure that the same thing would be done with the seminaries if we asked it. Give us a space and we can have a class on teaching clergy how to do camera, how to do things like that. 'Cause what made me think about it in particular was during the pandemic, and it was sad and historical, comical at the same time. Pastors would say, "Oh man, I'm not in front of a congregation."
Hmm.
I said, "What do you think happens when you do TV?
Right.
It's you." the floor manager and the camera people. You bring your own inspiration.
Right. That's right. That's right. And it's funny because a lot of times I hear a lot of pastors say, "We got to get back to the church. We got to get back to the church." I said, listen, you know what? None of that's going to happen again. You know,
Right, correct,
it's
correct.
it's we live in a different
That
world.
train left the station. That's not
Yeah,
happening.
it's gone. It's gone. I said, so, we have to use what we have available to us. And I often think about what the Lord said to Moses, right? What do you have in your hand? So we have Zoom. I mean, I think
Hmm.
about this, right?
Hmm.
Nobody even knew what Zoom was until
Correct.
the pandemic hit.
And now
And
we all got PhDs in Zoom.
yeah, exactly. Now, it was interesting, right? Because I was doing this show a while ago and I was doing it on Facebook Live, right?
Okay.
And I think when you were on, I was doing it on Facebook Live. I know I was because I only been
Okay.
on YouTube for a little while, but I was doing it on Facebook Live. But prior to that was a radio show. It was just it was just verbal. And
Hmm.
then I remember I was in South Carolina and I was at a hotel and I could not get I had terrible reception and I
Okay.
couldn't get to the studio, right? Couldn't
Hmm.
get to the studio. And so one of my friends, one of my callers, she says, "Why don't you try using Facebook Live?" I said, "I never did that before." She
Okay.
said, "Well, you should try it." And I did. And as soon as I hit the button, I had over 700 people watching.
Wow.
I was like, that's what I said. I said,
Wow.
wow, this is amazing. I never stopped. So I kept doing the radio,
Okay.
but I would then do a simulcast on Facebook
Okay.
Live.
Okay.
And then uh, the contract was lost. The producers of the radio show lost their contract. They couldn't do that anymore. So I just started doing it specifically on Facebook Live.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so from there, last year, yeah, I've been doing this now on Facebook, on YouTube for about a year. So
Okay.
I went to this format because this format is a better format to do this kind of thing than Facebook Live.
Okay. Okay.
So who would have thought that? Now I've been, being at churches. I was actually leading two churches at the same time. And so this was during the pandemic. And what do? We created a format to do services on TV, on YouTube or through
Hmm.
Facebook. We were doing that. And we were getting more people attending the worship services than were coming into the building.
And something that I feel embarrassed that didn't hit me till someone had a conversation. COVID, for some people, said I can never go back into a building because
Right,
I'm immune compromised
right.
and I can't risk getting sick. I
Mm,
love you, Pastor. You great. I love to hear you preach. Da, 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 da.
right, right,
But I can't come back into the building because I'm immune compromised.
right.
On the other hand, I've heard so many clergy say, wow, we never had this many people in Bible study in person. But online, yeah, think about it. You come home, you eat your dinner, black out your screen, or you eat
Right,
listening right at the same time.
right,
Don't have
right,
to move the car, don't have to deal with public transportation. What's
right,
there not to like?
right. Love it. Love it.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so, I said, don't fight what the Lord has given you. The Lord has given
right,
you a gift.
right,
Use the gift. Use the
right.
gift because the gift is an amazing thing. Which now, by the way, we're going to transition and talk more about, and this is interesting. This conversation is very interesting. We've been actually talking, in my opinion, about leadership because
Hmm.
leadership is recognizing where you are, recognizing what
Hmm.
you have, and then putting it to good use. So
Hmm.
it's at the top of the hour. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go ghost for a moment. You can do
Okay,
likewise. And then
okay,
when we come back, then what we'll do is we'll look at some of the responses. Now, I think I did something. I'm looking at my YouTube. I think I hit the wrong YouTube, so my chat's not working, everybody. But I can see your comments. So please, ma'am, please, sir, the question, I will repeat it during the course of the next few minutes, but I want you to respond to that question so that we can have you in the dialogue. As you know, that's what we do every single time that we come on. That's every week. But what are some challenges or characteristics of exemplary leadership? That's the question that I'm asking tonight. So please, ma'am, please, sir, put your comments in there. So when we come back, we're going to delve into the article and we're going to talk more about what these leadership qualities and characteristics really are. Okay, so I'm going to share
okay,
my screen again, and then we'll go ahead and we'll come back in just a few minutes.
okay.
All right, good deal. So here we go with the share. Get that up there, and okay, here we go. Matters of Faith family, please don't forget to support our sponsors and advertisers. The JLR Company, and J. Lauren R. Consulting LLC for all of your church financial consulting needs. Contact us at jlorenr@jlr.llc. That's jlorenr@jlr.llc. Or simply give us a call, 718-328-8096. 718-328-8096. If you need your trustees to be trained, if you need evangelism training, or if you need to do a financial workshop, if you want to build, grow, or borrow money in order to grow your church, buy your church, please reach out to the JLR company, J. Lauren R. Consulting LLC, at jlorenr@jlr.llc, or call us 718-328-8096. It's not about the castle, it's about the kingdom. Matters of Faith, the book, you can purchase the book through my Cash App, $Matters of Faith. The book is $24.15. If you want a hard copy, simply note that. If you want to get a hard copy and you do not use Cash App, please send a check or money order to Post Office Box 301, New York, New York 10035. That's the JLR Company at P.O. Box 301, New York, New York 10035. You can also get it as an ebook. Go to www.smashwords.com/books/view/993177. That's www.smashwords.com/books/view/993-177. Check out the Eat Okra app for all black-owned restaurants and so much more all over the nation. That's right, Eat Okra. Now get your subscription to Better Mag magazine today. A 2-year subscription is only $27.50, and you can get that subscription by going to www.abettermag.com. That's www.abettermag.com. Professional, compassionate, and family-friendly services in time of bereavement. John J. Fox and Sons Incorporated Funeral Services, proudly serving the Bronx community for 125 years. 718-733-9114. 718-733-9114. And don't forget, please subscribe, like, and share our Matters of Faith YouTube channel. Subscribe, like, and share our Matters of Faith YouTube channel. And now, the article, Exemplary Leadership. That article can be found in my column, Matters of Faith, in the Yonkers Insider, www.theYonkersInsider.blogspot.com. That's www.yonkersinsider.blogspot.com. The column is also carried in Better Mag magazine, www.abettermag.com. That's www.abettermag.com. It's also carried in Pamela's Big Heart newsletter, and coming soon, it will be in the Positive Community magazine, www.thepositivecommunity.com. That's www.thepositivecommunity.com. Now, many of you have received a link directly from me to the article. If you have, I pray that you read the article. If not, go to my Facebook page, go to my LinkedIn, go to my Blue Sky. You will find it there. Exemplary Leadership. Joshua chapter 1, verse 7, New King James Version. Only be strong and very courageous, being careful to do according to all the law that Moses my servant commanded you. Do not turn from it to the right hand or to the left, that you may have good success wherever you go. Exemplary leadership. On a recent airplane flight, I heard the familiar announcement. In the event of decompression, an oxygen mask will automatically appear in front of you. To start the flow of oxygen, pull the mask towards you. Place it firmly over your nose and mouth, secure the elastic band behind your head, and breathe normally. Although the bag does not inflate, oxygen is flowing to the mask. If you are traveling with a child or someone who requires assistance, secure your mask on first and then assist the other person. Keep your mask on until a uniformed crew member advises you to remove it. Without exception, this announcement is made on every flight regardless of who the carrier might be or how many times you may have flown or heard it. It is repeated as a reminder that there may be unexpected and serious problems during the flight, but that provisions have already been made for your safety and well-being. In life, it is without exception that you will encounter problems. Some minor and others could be life-threatening. But we, like those who fly on airplanes, have an assurance that provisions have already been made for our well-being. We have reminders that provisions have already been taken, that will help us to make it through the most trying and difficult of circumstances. Joshua was being installed as the head of the nation of Israel after the death of Moses, and for the first time, the Lord speaks directly to him. He spoke words of encouragement and told him that he would successfully bring this nation of people into the promised land. He also told him what he needed to do to achieve that success. The Lord didn't tell him anything that he didn't already know. He just refreshed his memory and reassured him that he would be successful if he followed the instructions given to him first by Moses, now by God himself. Unlike Moses, who died before getting into the promised land, the Lord tells Joshua that his leadership would be successful if he was careful to observe and follow all that he is being instructed to do. A friend told me that he was on a flight and the cabin did lose its pressure. The mask did drop down. The passengers all followed the instructions that they had been given, but the flight attendant forgot to put her mask on first and was overcome by a lack of oxygen. Just because we know what we are supposed to do, and even if we are the ones giving the instruction, does not mean that we will do it. Stressful or unusual circumstances and situations can cause us to forget or ignore our training. Like Moses and the flight attendant, we have our instructions and we know what's expected of us, even if we are stressed or in unusual situations. Joshua guided the Israelites into the promised land through prudent decision making and adherence to divine guidance. Allow me to draw upon the words of encouragement bestowed upon Joshua by the Lord. Be strong and of good courage. Do not be afraid nor be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. Verse 9. I sincerely hope and pray that we will emulate Joshua's exemplary leadership. Be blessed. And for the last time this evening, I want to ask this question again, but I really want you to think about it. What are some characteristics of exemplary leadership? Let me ask it again. What are some characteristics of exemplary leadership? Answer the question, guys. Well, I told you something about my guest. I told you that he was a Little League baseball player, that he is a proud product of the New York City public school system, that he is the president and CEO of Dr. Willard Ashley Sr. LLC and does psychoanalysis over in New Jersey, but he can do it here in New York, that he's the pastor of Abundant Joy Community Church, that he's served there for over 4 decades. I've told you that he's a prolific author. I told you that he's a prolific speaker and speaks globally. And I also told you that he's a proud fan of the New York Yankees and the now succeeding New York Knicks. But what he is above all of that is a product of Harlem. So center in all of these pictures, you see a picture of him, some historical pictures of he and his family, but that Harlem hat, being a Harlemite myself, I certainly congratulate you and applaud you for being a Harlemite. So my family, Matters of Faith family, that is, I want you to welcome with me for the second half of our show, my esteemed guest, this awesome man of God, Reverend Dr. Willard Ashley Sr. Okay, so I found some pictures.
I
Pulled,
see.
yeah, I did, and I saw that I put a couple of your books up,
Hmm.
spiritual care, and the one that I was looking at particularly that caught my attention, Learning to Lead, and
Hmm.
that's what we're talking about tonight. And so I wanted to pop that up, put that up so that you might be able to speak to that, and that would open us up to the second half of our show, if that's all right with you.
Sure, absolutely. So again, thank you for the introduction. Thank you for the invitation to be part of this conversation, part of your program. Learning to Lead is what I called my tenure book.
Mm,
Ironically, I was the second Black person to be granted tenure in New Brunswick Theological Seminary.
mm,
And at the time, the person that had the position I was holding had received tenure, didn't write anything, not even a comic book.
wow. Wow.
I need not say what his ethnicity is, but
Mm,
you can imagine.
Hmm.
And the dean at the time came to me and said, you're up for tenure. That was part of the agreement, and that you need to write a book.
Hmm.
And I looked at her and said, okay. And she says, did you hear what I said? Yeah, you said I need to produce a book for part of my tenure. Well, good. When do you need it by?
Hmm.
Because I had already figured, hey, I'm the black guy. I don't have it
Right.
twisted. I know what the deal is.
Right.
I'm
Right.
going to need a book for my tenure. I don't care what everybody.
Right.
So I
Right.
had already had a publisher agree to do the book. It was just a matter of saying, when do you need it by? And so this particular book is an edited volume, and it has multiple contributors looking at leadership through different lenses. But also, there's a section towards the back of the book by different faith traditions that talks about etiquette in their particular faith.
Hmm.
So chaplains could get the book and say, oh, so dealing with this population, these are kind of the expected etiquette kinds of things. So reach out my hand and someone touch my hand. Well, she's an Islamic woman, or so things of that nature. But also in the beginning of the book, there's a piece that talks about creation and how it's our gift of God to take care of creation. There's a piece in there by my good friend Dr. Jeff Gardere.
Mm-hmm.
Talks about the psychology
Hmm.
of leadership. There's a chapter by a man by name Michael Geekin. Michael at one point was the lead for the Industrial Areas Foundation, which was the Saul Alinsky organization.
Hmm.
He talks about the principles of organizing. So there's just a number of things. We talk about the Bronx. There's a brother in there, God, he was the head chaplain at Calvary Hospital in the Bronx. And I see his face and I can't think of his name right now, so forgive me. But he does a chapter talking about hiding in plain sight
Hmm.
and how some of the African religions we hide in plain sight. That we borrow things from those religions, but we don't tell you that it's from West Africa.
Hmm. Hmm.
But
Hmm.
you see it. I mean, and you see that in the worship in black churches.
Yeah.
We may not say, by the way, we borrowed this from West Africa. We don't want to scare you, but
Right.
guess where that came from?
Right. Right.
So it talks about that. But most importantly, weekly is important. It talks about different styles of leadership. It talks about when you go into a new neighborhood and your neighborhood, you're the first this, the first black that, the first black whatever, or which is a very important topic for us right now, when neighborhoods are gentrified. And so how do you now embrace a new neighbor
Hmm.
who sees you on Sunday as a nuisance,
Hmm. Hmm.
making noise?
Hmm.
Who reports to the police, these cars are double parked on Sunday. I can't get out.
Right. Right.
And those are very real challenges we have. Some churches are dying
Yep.
because they can't double park on Sunday.
Right.
Because people did call the police. And the first time my beamer gets towed, okay. Second time my beamer gets towed, Pastor, I love you, but I gotta find some place else that has parking.
Right. Right. Right.
It is,
And
it
it's
is so.
interesting because a lot of churches in the inner cities, obviously, they can't maintain the properties, and so they're partnering with developers, and they're developing the
Hmm.
property. And
Hmm.
so who's moving into these buildings? They're not us. So
Correct.
there you go. So now you have a new church,
Hmm.
but your people can't come in anymore because you built the
Right.
new building, so the parking spaces are not available to you. You can't park there. And so, unless you have the relationship, and it's got to be a real good one, because if it's on a main drag here in New York City, if a bus
Hmm.
comes by, they're giving you tickets now.
Hmm.
So you can't park, you can't double park because they're giving you tickets. So, that's one of the results of gentrification. You know,
Absolutely.
you get a new building, you get a new church, so to
Hmm.
speak, but
Hmm.
then you can't populate it because the
Right.
people who live in the building that you built, that you're allowed to build up over you, are not coming to your church.
Yeah, well, a lot of churches saw this whole concept of selling the air rights as their
Hmm.
Hail Mary pass.
Right.
And to your
Exactly.
point, yeah, so now you got 20 stories above you, but like I said, the people that moved in those 20 stories
Right.
don't look like you. And
Nope.
it creates another challenge for clergy. If we're a black church, wink, wink, and all of a sudden a group of people that are from European descent show up, do we change the character of who we are to appease them? Or do we say
Right.
this is who we are, take it or leave it? And
Right.
as you know, so many of our colleagues have had to wrestle with that. They looked up and said, whoa, all of a sudden we got all these white people sitting in the pews, but we're a black church. Do I preach differently? Do we do different songs now? Do I not say certain things in the sermon that I know may be a trigger? So back to your reading of Joshua about being strong,
Hmm.
about being courageous,
Hmm.
and understanding your calling. And again, this is Willard's opinion, but I
Right.
think too many people now see ministry as a vocation, not
Mm.
not as a calling.
Yes.
They're not going to be John Scott because by
Absolutely.
being in John Scott, I may lose my conspicuous consumption.
Yeah.
By being in John Scott, I may not be able to live in the suburbs and drive cars to begin with a B. So I'm not going to be courageous. I'm not going to be strong. And you don't have an understanding that the preacher we looked up to, they drove luxury cars, but they earned them.
Right. Right. Right.
There was many days they went without and went into their own pockets to pay for stuff.
Hmm. Hmm.
So now fast forward 20, 30 years later, yeah, they drive a Benz, but you know what? They earned that Benz
Mm.
for the times when people needed and they were there,
Mm.
for the 2 o'clock in the morning visits,
Yeah.
etc.
Yeah.
For playing while injured, so to speak. Sick as a dog, but he showed up in church to preach the gospel the best that they
Hmm.
could, whatever the case may be. And so I think that our younger generation of preachers don't understand that the reason we the congregation gave you these luxuries so that you can say things we can't say unless we lose our
Correct.
job.
Correct.
You
And
can stand up and tell the mayor when he or she is full of it and still have income. We
right.
can't.
Right. Right.
So we
And
expect you
that's
to be courageous.
now I'm glad that you said that because in the leadership capacity that we've had in the church historically, that
Hmm.
was the way in which we were able to have voice to do that, right? That's how
Hmm.
civil rights movement, that's how we were able
Hmm.
to, because the preachers could do it because the congregations were the ones who supplied their income
Hmm.
and their needs. And
Hmm.
now, because so many people are, bivocational, so to speak,
Hmm.
they've lost their voice too. So they
Hmm.
can't speak up and say things because if they do, they can't take off. They can't, well, I can't go to see you at 12 o'clock midnight because I got to be at work at 7 o'clock in the morning. I got to
Hmm.
be at 5
Hmm.
o'clock. So they've
Hmm.
lost their independence as well. And
Absolutely.
somehow the churches, because the older people in the church that understood that, right, they are now becoming the ones who are on fixed incomes and or dying out.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
the new ones haven't been taught, quote unquote, the culture of
Hmm.
the church as it exists and why it exists the way it is.
Hmm.
That's the challenge that we face right now. And so people don't come to the church because they don't even recognize the position of the church in societal building and how it helped us to get where we are. But now, under the current administration, what we're looking at now is those rights that were fought for and
Hmm.
earned are now systemically being pulled back and being taken away. The
Hmm.
14th Amendment that
Hmm.
gave us our rights, that the new Constitution of the United States is built on the 14th Amendment, and they're trying to destroy that completely,
Hmm.
which means that the foundation that we had that brought us to where we are, which is the church, the black church. It wasn't the multiracial church. It was
Hmm.
we had some consistencies or we had some help from some
Hmm.
outside
Hmm.
churches,
Hmm.
some outside denominations, but it
Hmm.
was beyond the shadow of a doubt, it was the
Hmm.
black church that did
Absolutely.
this. It was the black church. And when you don't understand that, if a
Hmm.
people don't understand it, then they lose the connection to their greatest strength. And the greatest strength that we've ever had has been in the Lord. Has been our relationship
Absolutely.
with God.
Well, and it's interesting. So you make many excellent points around that. But I think for me, what stands out is back to your passage, being
Mhm.
strong, being
Mhm.
courageous.
Right.
What does it look like in 2025?
Hmm.
And so I always like that one piece of one of the Rocky movies. I think it was Rocky 2 or 3. What do we have that we can't stand to lose?
Hmm.
Yeah, I like the trinkets, I like the luxury
Right.
stuff,
Right.
but it can't be, I can't talk, I can't speak up because if I speak up, I might lose that.
Right.
If
Right.
I speak up, then I won't get the rubber chicken dinner. The mayor won't think nice things about me. The governor
Mhm.
will lose my phone number. Yeah, I get all of that, but if you've been called and it's
Right.
not just a vocation, I'm not trying to die prematurely, but that may happen if I say the right things to the wrong people.
Right.
I get it.
Right.
If I'm making you too comfortable, then I'm not doing my job.
Right.
I'm not saying I'm going to be reckless and just throw stuff out there to make a name. I'm saying no. I said, but there's times I have to say to you, that's not doesn't help my people.
Right. Right. It's interesting. You says I go to a lot of meetings with the mayor here in New York
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
others, and they've come to know me now.
Okay.
They come to know because see, one of the nicer things is that I don't work for anyone. I work for
Hmm.
myself.
Hmm.
So, and I have a voice that I can share that voice. And
Hmm.
I do. And I said, I remember going to a meeting just recently and they've been touting this, the city of yes, saying yes to every new building and stuff like that. I said, yeah, but
Hmm.
there's a problem with that. And so I stood up at a meeting and challenged the commissioner of housing. I said, there's a problem with that. I said, because, you know, um, some of us have made investments in the community trying to restore the community by buying taxable homes that support the community.
Hmm.
Now, if all you're doing is bringing in low income housing, which is necessary, but if you have no tax base with that, then you all you're doing is putting poor on top of poor. It's like nothing leaves nothing. And that doesn't attract businesses to the community, which builds communities. What you're doing in places like Brooklyn and other places that have gentrified is that you have market rate housing. These people are spending a lot of money, which is drawing a lot of businesses. So now you get the chain stores, now you get the
Hmm.
banks coming in. But
Hmm.
so what they're doing is they're coming into developments like the one that I live in,
Hmm. Hmm.
developers are coming in and buying the homes and just tearing them down and building these apartment buildings.
Hmm. Hmm.
But that goes against the code that they call the land disposition agreement that was
Hmm.
established when they built
Right.
these homes so that they
Right.
would be the foundation of the community.
Right.
But because the homeowners associations are so inactive, remember we
Hmm.
talked about the
Hmm.
culture that we have,
Hmm.
they're inactive. So developers are coming in and saying, we can't find anybody, and they're just doing what they want to do. But
Right.
when you turn a blind eye to that, that
Correct.
makes it even worse.
Correct.
So I told them about one that I know of. I said, but I don't have any stand in that because it's not in my development. They don't come to my development because they know that they know me
Hmm.
now, right?
Hmm.
But this one right around the corner from me should not have gone up because I have the disposition agreement right here.
Hmm.
I shared it with my elected officials and they did nothing.
Hmm.
And so the commissioner said, wow, that's new. I said, that's not new. It's been going off all the time. I said, but you guys have not looked at it because the people that you have in these leadership roles
Hmm.
don't know what's in the archive. They don't know why it was established. So they're not
Hmm.
looking for those things. They're looking at all the new stuff that's coming out, but there's some other stuff that happened before that created the reason for all that you see today.
Hmm.
But if you miss that, you can't do the job effectively because you don't know the history. And so the commissioner said, okay, I'm going to look into it. So the last word I heard is that they are doing an investigation now. That was a week and a half ago. So now I'm going to call them myself and say, now what's going on? Because I haven't heard
Hmm.
from them. Because I'm
Right.
going to hold their feet to the fire. Because if you don't do that, then what happens is, again, the history. and you know this, you're a professor, right? The history, if you don't know your history, you're destined to repeat it. So if you go back to doing what you did before, which is build a lot of low income housing, what you're going to recreate is the same environments that we came
Mm-hmm.
out of, that we
Mm-hmm.
were able to build out of and
Mm-hmm.
create communities that were real. But now, because the history is not being transferred to the next generation, it's being lost again. We can't have.
And you make an excellent point that cuts across all lines. The loss of history
Mm,
long before the debates in Florida and other places. Let's just talk about history that we can control.
hmm
I'm amazed at today's athlete, and I say Kurt Flood, and they go, "Who's that?"
mm,
And I say, "Your monkey butt has free agency because a brother at St. Louis gave up everything
mm,
and started this whole free agency conversation.
mm,
Married Judith Pace, became an alcoholic because of all the stuff he went through.
mm.
You need to understand your history. If it wasn't
Right.
for a Kurt Flood, none of you would be doing free agency stuff.
Mm,
He challenged it. And so one of the problems is we don't read.
right.
We don't read and we don't research. And we have fallen prey to this 140 character mindset.
Hmm.
Give me the Cliff Notes, give me the Reader's Digest version. I'm going to listen to what the nice people on my favorite show may be, whether it's Fox, CNN, MSNBC, whatever the talking heads are, and they're gonna digest and what I need to know and spit it out so I get it.
hmm hmm
No, you have to do your own research. I even tell my own congregation,
Right.
read behind me. I may have had a bad day. I may have messed up the scripture. I don't know. I
Well,
need you.
let me tell you, last week and I preached Moses, right? I told about Moses, right? And I said Moses spent the first 20 years of his life in Egypt. Well, he did, but he also spent the next 20 years. It's his 40 years, not
Right,
20.
right,
And
right.
and I said, I told him this past Sunday, I said, I gotta apologize to you because I
Yeah.
made a mistake. I said it wasn't a technical mistake. I said, but it was a mistake. I said, because I said the first 20 years, it was 20, but it was additional 20, it was 40 years. And then he spent 40 years in Midian. Then he spent 40 years in the wilderness. So he died at 120. But we got to make sure that we get that right because I don't want to misinform you
Mm-hmm.
and then not correct myself because I don't want to embarrass myself. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
above making a mistake. I said, but I don't know where the 20 came from in my head, but it was stuck in my head. And somehow or another it came out. But I'm telling you that, and so they looked at me, and I'm glad that the congregation understands that
Mm-hmm.
I have the capacity to make a mistake, but I also have the capacity to to accept my errors and my humanity and
Mm-hmm.
take responsibility for what I've done and correct it where I can. And
Mm-hmm.
that I think is more important because we tend to not do that. And so we lose a lot. I remember working for an organization and we got a new president. And the president said, don't ever tell them that you don't know. It's like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not going to tell people that I know something that I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I will tell them, I'm not sure about that. Let me get back to you. But I'm never going to tell people I know something that I don't know.
Right.
I said, I said, so if you're asking me to do that, you're asking me to lie. I'm not going to lie.
A little bit of that is New York culture.
No,
We,
he
we
wasn't from New York at
oh
all.
well no, I'm saying, but I know I'm
Right,
laughing as a New Yorker. How do you get to Coney Island? You take the A train. No, you don't.
right.
No, no, yeah. I was just
Yeah,
there the
take the
other
A
day.
train.
Like,
Yeah,
oh,
you'll be someplace, but you won't be in Coney Island,
right.
No, but that's
But
exactly
yeah,
right.
yeah.
If you give people wrong instruction and they wind up in a place that they weren't supposed to be at.
Right.
And that's what could happen. And as preachers, we do that sometimes.
Oh, absolutely.
And of course, I say this oftentimes. Like it's not new to me, but I heard it from Reverend Sampson from Detroit. He said if it's all excitement and no enlightenment, then you lead that person to damnation. You
See,
know.
now you in trouble. You were doing good till you quoted Reverend Dr. Frederick G. Sampson. He was one of my many mentors.
Okay.
We were so close. When his wife passed away, we rode in the funeral car with his family.
Wow. Wow.
And here's how sometimes life plays tricks on you. He passed away, and I just had surgery. The surgeon said, "Don't even think about it.
Mm, mm,
Don't even let it come out your mouth to ask, can you? The answer is no. You got stitches, haven't even begun to think about healing.
mm.
No,
Wow.
no, not happening."
Wow.
He would come to our church every he and JC Wade would come every spring, and they were the spring revival. William Augustus Jones was the fall
Mm,
revival.
mm.
And Samson, I remember there was one time in particular, Samson came and Dick Gregory heard he was in town and showed up.
Wow.
Like, here we got Frederick D. Sampson and Dick
Wow.
Gregory. What could be sweeter?
No, you can't get any better than that.
And on my 40th birthday, he invited me to Tab to preach 8 and 11, and then threw me a surprise birthday party.
Wow.
I mean,
Wow.
there's so many Samson stories that could be a whole show in and of itself, just sharing Samson
Well,
stories.
see, I didn't know that. I had no idea about that. But I heard him preach at the Baptist, the National Baptist Convention.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I heard, I said, oh my God. And I bought the tape. I
Hmm.
still have the tape. I listen to it
Oh.
frequently,
Hmm.
because he was profound in his theology. And one of my mentor, my chief main mentor, is a pastor by the name of Reverend Dr. Julius Scipio. I don't know if you ever heard that
Mm.
name before.
Mm.
Dr. Scipio was from he was colored Methodist church.
Okay.
He and Samson were great friends. They
Okay.
pastored together in Detroit and stuff. And so he had that kind of demeanor and that kind of that kind of status. And his son was the best man at my wedding. And so he was
Okay.
like my dad. And you talked about that summer that you stayed and you went to the brownstone in Harlem.
Hmm. Hmm.
Well, I stayed a summer at his house
Okay.
in South Carolina.
Okay.
Changed my whole life. Changed my whole
Hmm.
life. I'd never, my dad was my idol. I love my father. He died when I was young. But my dad was, my role model. But the other person in my life was Dr. Scipio.
Okay.
And I remember I was in South Carolina. I'll tell you the story because it was an amazing story. I went down, got a job. I was probably about 15. My mom had already passed away. And so I went to South Carolina to spend the summer down there. I got a job. And in fact, I was working for a nursing home, which
Mm.
was his mother-in-law's nursing home in South
Hmm.
Carolina. And I was staying with my grandmother.
Hmm.
Um, and my grandmother, I came home from work one day and all of my luggage was on the porch.
Hmm.
And she said, "You can't stay here." I said, "What? You can't stay here. You can't got to go." I was like, but where am I supposed? I'm 800 miles away from home. Where am I?
Hmm.
So I took a walk up to Scipio's house, and he was out of town. His wife was there, and I just called his mother, I just called his wife Ma Scipio. I used to call my grandmother Miss Vi, So
Hmm.
Miss Vi put me out. She said, "Well, what did you do?" I said, "What did I do anything?" I said, "I go to work. I work for your mother, right, at the
Hmm.
nursing home. When I get home, when I get off, I either come here, or I go there. I just go there. I give up, some money because I'm making." I said, "That's it. I haven't done anything." She says, "Well, I don't know." She says, I would tell you that you could stay here, but Rev's not here, and he has to give the approval to that."
Hmm.
Just when she said that, the telephone rang,
Hmm.
and it was Rev. And he said, "Well, I've been calling you, my son. Go get your stuff. Come on home." And I stayed with them and I saw something. I saw a man living what he preached on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And I watched this. And I was with them. So I was a part of the family everywhere we went, and that was when people invited you to their homes after the
Hmm.
worship service, and we
Hmm.
ate at different people's homes. And it was amazing because they treated me like I was part of that family. And I watched and I watched and I watched. And it did something, stirred up something in me. And when the Lord called me into ministry, one morning I was working at my office. I was having a prayer meeting in my office at 6 o'clock in the morning.
Hmm.
on 42nd Street, Park Avenue. That's where my office was.
Okay.
And the Lord called me. And I called my pastor. He wasn't available. And I called Reverend Scipio. He was in Memphis, Tennessee at the time.
Okay.
And his son had just been called into ministry, his other son.
Hmm.
And man, he said, Jay, it's interesting you just calling. He said, because daddy's never home on Wednesday morning. He's always at the hospital, but he's home this morning. And I talked with him and
Hmm.
I told him what happened. He said, really? I said, what? I said, well, Rev, you don't sound surprised. He says, I've seen that that's call in your life, all of your life. I was just wondering how long it was going to take for you to receive it.
Hmm.
And then he began to talk with me and share with me. So my experience with Dr. Scipio was life changing. It changed everything about me. And I'm so glad because even when my dad died, um, he became my surrogate dad.
Okay.
So anything, if I need to talk to someone, I'd call him. With my wife and I were going through a little bit of a spat, I called him.
Okay.
And I thought he was going to support me, and make me feel comfortable. And he said
Hmm.
something to me. He said something to me. I said, that didn't help me at all. So, but he was always honest with me, and he helped me to become who I am today. So I have my Julius Scipio stories as you have your Fred Sampson stories, because that
Okay.
without those
Yeah.
people, you had
Right.
William Augustus Jones. I mean, my God, I remember going to his office with Dr. Sears, who I was, come out of Dr. Sears Goodwill Baptist Church. And
Okay.
we went to William Augustus Jones. He was preaching for him. And I said, I was new in ministry. I said, what would you tell a young minister? What kind of advice would you get him? He said, pee. I said, what, pray? He said, no, pee. Before you get on the pulpit, go pee.
God, that sounds like him. So,
I'm sitting down. I don't even, I have no words. I have no words because I'm sitting amongst these giants, right? I have no words. I
mhm.
said, okay, 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 I get it. But he was right, and I do
Yeah.
it all the time.
Oh, absolutely. So Good Friday. I'm living in central New Jersey. Let's say exit 130 on the Garden
Mhm,
State
mhm.
Parkway. Phone rings at 10 o'clock. I'm in my bathrobe. Oh, I'm not doing seven last words any place today, so I'm just going to chill.
Right.
It's him on the phone. He says, Doc, one of our preachers took ill. I need you to fill in.
Huh.
Now, I know we don't say this out loud, but the last place you want to flunk
Right, right.
is Bethany Baptist or Tab in Detroit.
Mm,
Okay.
mm.
You never want to flunk, but if you do, you don't want to flunk there.
Right, right, right,
And so
right,
I'm thinking like, not only is it going to be at Bethany, you got six other preachers who are going to be critical pew.
right, right.
Okay, let's be honest, right? And I'm like, how are you going to tell William Augustus Jones, no, I can't make it. I can't do it.
Wow,
So like,
wow.
okay, Doc, I'll be there. By the way, which word am I preaching? Oh, it's the first one. Bathrobe, 10 o'clock, Bethany, Brooklyn. Okay.
And what time you have to be there? 3 o'clock?
Yeah, right. No, 12 o'clock.
12 o'clock. 12 o'clock. Oh
That's
my.
what I'm saying.
Yeah, oh, it's 12. It's 12. He's doing
Yeah,
12 noon. 12.
yeah.
Okay.
So somehow, miraculously, don't ask me how, my trustee got me there on time. He sent all the preachers out, closed the door, and he said, Will, you don't have to hit a home run, just get on base.
That's interesting. That's exactly what Pastor Sears said. He said when you get up first, just get on base.
Yeah.
Don't try to hit a home run.
He said, you don't have to hit a home
You're
run,
not the
just
cleanup
get on
batter.
base. Yeah,
Yeah, you're not
just
the
get on
cleanup batter.
base. And that was so helpful. And I said, so how I do, Doc? Oh, you hit a double.
And it's interesting, right? Because that's leadership in a way. Characteristics of a leader is being able to transfer that to someone who's following you.
Yeah.
And so him saying that to you, knowing that you were, in your bathrobe at 10 o'clock, got there at 12 o'clock, and just to encourage you to say to you, don't worry about hitting a home run, just get on
Yeah.
base,
Just
which
get
gives
on
you a sense
base.
of reassurance, right? So
Yeah.
I'm okay. I'm okay. I don't have to try to be, Babe Ruth, or I don't have to try
Right.
to be Hank Aaron and get
Hmm.
and just knock it out the park. I don't have to do that. All I have to do is bunt.
Yeah.
Just get on base.
And he was instrumental in me getting on BET, quite honestly.
Hmm.
Um, I had gotten Latoya Beasley got me on WNJR very
Mm-hmm.
early. And I was used to being on radio, and then she got me some ups on. I used to do Kiss FM from time to time.
Okay.
When Calvin Butts didn't preach, she'd have me on doing the
Oh,
sermon.
okay.
And so, but then at that point, Bill Jones got me into this whole television thing.
Hmm.
I said, you gotta graduate you to TV. So he got me on some cable stations, and one day he got me on BET, and I was 7:30 on Monday morning on BET,
Wow.
and didn't fully appreciate the power of media, as you were talking about that earlier on.
Mm-hmm.
We were filling the building, but BET happened. We were doing three services. 6 o'clock was getting packed, but 8 and 11 was always
Wow.
standing room only.
Wow.
We went from, please come to Bible study to 300 people in the basement on Saturday for
Hmm.
Bible study.
Wow.
That's like media. And I'm thinking, who, come on, it's Monday morning, 7:30. Ain't nobody watching me.
Right, right.
I'm in Washington, state of Washington on vacation. Someone says, that's Dr. Ashley. And I'm like, holy crap, people do watch.
Yeah, 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 they do. I mean, this is a small, very, very small broadcast, right? It's very small. But I have been in places that people have come up to me and say, "You Matters of Faith, you Reverend Russell," and I have never seen them before. I have no idea,
Yeah,
and they say, "I watch you all the time." I have
yeah.
no idea.
It's just amazing. I was in Atlanta airport, and one of my catchphrases said, "Am I in the right building?" Like, oh
Hmm.
man, oh, you listen, okay.
Yeah, yeah. I, I, I,
So,
I I
yeah,
applaud you. I applaud you. That's amazing.
the outreach is just all I'm trying to say is more so the outreach is incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a light switch. I mean, I'm literally like one day, like, whoa, where all these people come from? Like, what the
Mm.
heck? Yeah, we see you on TV. Like, oh, okay, Then I think, other than my mom, I didn't think nobody else watched.
Right, right, right. And it's interesting, right? Because there's people who are in the community that didn't know that you were from their community until they saw you
Right.
on TV. Then they said, "Oh,"
Exactly.
and I'm going, and they say he's right here. He's been here all the time.
Exactly.
Didn't know that they had a jewel in the community that was doing and that was able to serve them what they needed to have.
And I know we're all human, and so we have all these little things. But I remember coming into office, and my secretary said some guy's on the phone named Key. Like, oh, okay, some guy named Key.
Hmm.
Like, his first name isn't John. Yeah, 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 yeah. He's not from North Carolina. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Hmm.
I'm
John
like,
P. Key.
do you know who that is? Yeah, some guy named Key that lives in North Carolina. Like, oh, no, 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 no.
John
That
P. Key. That's what it was.
Yeah, yeah. And he came to the church.
Wow.
He did two concerts at the church, and the first concert was magnificent. The second concert, the bus is outside. The deacons didn't like it because this became my church now. So another conversation.
Right, right,
They
right.
said we're not going to pay him. I said, I'm sorry, I missed when I asked you. Did I ask you to pay him?
Hmm.
Did I miss a conversation or two? Because I didn't ask you to pay him, did I?
Hmm.
No, then what's your problem?
Hmm.
I'm talking to his person that collects the money, and we're talking, I can give you this amount of money, da da da.
Right.
And in the middle of our talking, we hear the band start up. She says, I guess he don't care. So whatever you got, give it. We're,
Right.
we're, we're good. Like, oh,
Right.
okay. And so we
Right.
go downstairs, and he gets up, and the very first song he's doing, Show Up, and he stops the song,
Love that song.
and he
Love it.
looks dead at the deacons and says, and I'm not afraid of you.
Hmm.
And I don't know what you did or what you said to pastor, but I told him and I meant it. If he calls and we can get there, we're going to be there. And here
Hmm.
we are.
Hmm.
And that
So,
was like,
like tears, right? Tears, tears,
yeah,
tears. I love it. Do you know Dr. Craig Polite, by the way?
yes, I do. Yes, he's a black psychiatrist,
Yes, he is.
psychoanalyst,
Yes,
psychoanalyst,
he is.
psychoanalyst.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is. He was my psychoanalyst for many, many years.
No.
Yes. In fact, he wrote a book called Children of the Dream, The Psychology of Black Success.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, many years ago, him and Audrey Edwards. I'm in
Huh.
that book.
Really?
He
Now I
changed.
gotta go spend money and buy a book.
You
Okay,
got to go
okay,
find the book. Yeah.
okay.
And so
Okay.
he actually wrote about me in the book, and I was really amazed because I met him when I was in the insurance industry, and he came in to talk with us as new agents, and he said something that really captured my imagination. He said, "You have to learn to get out of your own way."
Hmm.
And I said, "Wow." And I went to him, I said, "How much does it cost to see you?" This was in 1982.
Hmm.
He said, $60 an hour.
Hmm.
I was like, "What?" I
Hmm.
was working, I was just starting in the insurance industry, and I was working, I had a job at the state of New York. I brought home like 200 something dollars every 2 weeks.
Hmm. Hmm.
$60 an hour. I was like, that's like
Yeah.
that's like my whole paycheck. But I said, you know what? I got to do this because
Okay.
I've got some, I've got some, I've got some things going on in me that I've got to figure out.
Sure.
And so I said, okay, I'm going to sell one policy a week just for him.
Okay.
Not only did I sell the one policy a week just for him, but I became the number one agent in my office.
Wow.
And Dr. Polite did a show on WLIB called The
Okay.
Mind's Eye.
Okay.
And I would go on every like once or twice a month. And we started this program, or we started this thing that we call programming yourself for success.
Hmm.
And I would be the person who would sit and talk, and we would do this. And
Hmm.
I did radio. I've always liked doing radio. I've done it in the
Okay.
past. So we did that, and we got great ratings. I remember one guy called in, and he was contemplating committing suicide
Hmm.
while we were on the air. And it's just an amazing thing. And so I mentioned him because I know you're both in an area of psychology, and I know you
Yeah,
mentioned
we're part
Jeff.
of this organization. I'm the newbie. I just joined,
Right.
but Black psychoanalysts speak.
Okay.
And it's I guess a voice for Black psychoanalytic work, but
Mm,
also support of each other and how do we navigate these concepts in this
right.
hostile environment
Right.
that and many of us we were trained to be good European
Mm,
mental health people
mm,
and had to recalibrate to be good for our neighborhood.
mm.
And so that's a way of affirming that, yeah, you passed the test to work in Europe. Now let's pass the test to work on 121st Street in Lenox.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I like that. It's interesting because you mentioned Jeff Gardier, and I know he's studied um with Dr. Polite, and they were good friends as well. And I met him several times. It's been a number of years since I've seen him, but yeah, it just kind of reminded me, and I just somehow know that it
So
connects.
Jeff and I are going to do going to be on a panel next year in 2026 in Montreal. This
Hmm.
happens to be the same week of the Jazz Festival.
Oh
Anyway,
wow,
so
just happens to be
but this
right.
happened to be, that was a hard sell. Jeff is jazz. Oh, I'm there. Okay, okay. So, but we're doing a panel next June on clergy abuse.
Really?
Yeah, mhm.
Please tell him I said hello. I haven't
I
spoken to
will.
him in a long time. I would love to have him maybe even come on the show. I haven't had him. I would love to have him on because he's a dynamic guy. I like him a lot. I know I haven't seen him. I know that his birthday's somewhere around the same time as
It was
mine.
just last week or the week
Yeah,
before last.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mine is May 8th, so I know
Okay, it was
we're
last week or
close
week
by.
before last. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah.
I remembered that about him. I said, yeah, we're real close. We kind of got the same birth dates or something. And so yeah, if you when you see him, just tell him I said hello. I appreciate that. And just tell him I'm extending to him an invitation if he can make himself available. I'd love to have him on. Love to have him on the show. And so, but I thank you for sharing all of those things because, when you talk about leadership, and we haven't really delved into the article, but that's okay because we're talking about it as a working tool. Uh,
Hmm.
how do you use these gifts that the Lord has given you? How do you maintain your position in leadership and then transfer that to others so that they too will not miss the mark? Because one of the things I mentioned in the article, certainly in my sermon, was that Moses, as great as a leader as he was, missed the mark because he did something that he wasn't supposed to do.
Hmm.
He hit that rock instead of speaking to it like the Lord told him to. And then he went to the precipice of the promised land, but couldn't go in. And that's one of the the downfalls of some of our leaders is that you get right there and then you kind of want to share God's glory and you can't do that.
Gardner C. Taylor had said back in 1982, when I was a seminarian, he had come up to Boston to the Harvard Epworth Chapel. And there was a few of us after he preached us silly that he spoke with. And he said one of the dangers is to get close to the shore and drown in shallow water.
Mm, mm.
And he said too many preachers get close to the shore, having sailed the ocean, and they drowned in shallow water.
Wow. Yeah, it's profound.
And that stayed with me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I you know, I think about Moses a lot and you get
Well, now when I'm trying to place the crowd, not that we place the crowd, but when I'm
right,
trying,
right.
when I'm trying to place the crowd as a bunch of preachers, I will say now we all can empathize with Moses. We've been there.
Hmm. Right.
The church folks to get on your last nerve and you want to smack the mess out the rock,
Mm.
but God said don't.
Don't don't speak to it. Let me ask you this, since you mentioned that, I hear a lot of preachers, a lot of pastors in particular, say that use this phrase a lot, and it bothers me
Hmm.
when they say dealing with church people, church folk,
Hmm.
and that becomes the sort of the catchphrase,
Hmm.
church folk.
Hmm.
I'm saying that's like saying, you're talking to the people that you're talking about,
Hmm.
and you're saying that didn't get that. Difficult to work with them. I mean, in a negative kind of a way. I said, I have a problem with that phrase. I just have a problem with it. It has never sat well with me.
So what I've experienced in working with clergy, both as a psychoanalyst, as a professor, um, as a pastor, is working in congregational ministry, whether it's
Mm.
black, white, Asian, doesn't
Hmm.
even matter the faith tradition. Working in congregational ministry, there are certain elements that are consistent.
Right,
Somebody's not going to like you.
right.
That's going to happen. They're going to organize the best they can to get your butt out of there. A group will say, "Oh my God, you walk on water," and they're over inflate what you can deliver. That those are realities,
Hmm.
and there are
Hmm.
those that kind of on the fence. That's any congregation.
Right.
Within all of that, we have to have a healthy sense of self. The mother would say, your press clippings, you're not as good as they say, you're not as bad as they say.
Hmm. Hmm.
You're somewhere,
Right,
somewhere
right. It's somewhere in between, right?
in between. And so, Food 101, get a grip. Understand who you are, what you bring. And say that to say that if you do this long enough, the opportunity to be bitter is there.
Mm.
And you and I both have seen enough older preachers that was very clear they were leaving this life bitter
Hmm.
because of their experiences in congregational ministry.
Mm.
We have to make a decision not to be bitter.
Mm.
It's another day at the office.
Yeah, yeah. And I appreciate that because when I hear people saying that, it's kind of like for me, it's like, this is a calling, right? We
Hmm.
talk about this is a calling. The Lord called you into this ministry.
Hmm.
Uh, you know that when you're called to war, you're going to be in some battles. That's the nature
Hmm.
of the beast. But if you tear your soldiers up who are there with you, then when you get your back against the wall, they may not have your back.
Correct.
So
And
I
yeah, and
wouldn't,
you have to understand that. Yeah.
yeah, I'm not, I don't talk about those individuals like that. And I don't use those phraseologies. And I'm leading a church now. and I've led several churches, and I worked with the Southern Baptists. I used to be the Northeast regional representative, and you
Okay.
know, I was a strategy coordinator. So I've worked with congregations, I've worked with conventions, I've worked with people across the board. But you know, when you begin to talk and use phrases, I think sometimes we just kind of go with the flow because everybody else is doing it. We kind of do it too. And I think that's not the way we need to go, particularly now. You
Yeah.
know, leadership has to be leadership. Be of good courage. You know, you don't have to go with the crowd in order to be effective. Be who you are. God called you, He anointed you, He equipped you, and He sent you.
Hmm.
Go and be who God called you to be.
Remember in the very beginning of this conversation, I thought about learning how to lose gracefully through
Yes,
Little
sir.
League.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That's the part that we don't always do well.
Mm,
And so when we're in congregational leadership and things don't go our way, instead of saying, okay, maybe it wasn't such a great idea, or let's rethink it, that's when we go through the church folk stuff.
mm,
And we get into that. And again, I and you know this, Dr. Sampson, Dr. Taylor, Dr. Jones,
mm.
towards the end of their ministry, they went through hell.
Yeah, yeah.
And while they were being hailed as the greatest black preachers in Ebony magazine, as pastors, they were going through some stuff.
Hmm.
They were going through some stuff. And so I've often said, oh, so-and-so can preach his or her butt off. I said, come back to me and talk to me after they got voted down for something at a church meeting and what did they preach on Sunday?
Mm,
Then I'll know how good they are.
mm,
When Dr. Taylor, and I'll do my last Dr. Taylor quote, we were in class, and one of the preachers from Alabama said, Dr. Taylor, I want to be a great preacher.
mm,
And he said, son, I wish you had not asked for that.
hmm,
And he says, why? He says, to be a great preacher, you have to have had your heart broken.
mm,
And many of us don't respond well once we've had our heart broken.
mm,
And so we fall into this bitterness, and we do fall into us against them, so to speak. And so that is also part of leadership. That's again, I get it. Moses hit the rock. I get it. Been there. And thank God for elders and mentors that said, I know you're hurt, but go to the one that heals hurts.
mm,
I know you're bleeding, but go to the one that can stop the bleeding. I know you're crying. Go to the one that counts the tears on your pillow
mm.
and trust in him, and he'll pull you through.
Dr. Dr. Ashley, I can't add anything to that. I thank you so much. I really do. You know, we're almost out of time, right? We're at like
I
9:50.
got it. I'm looking at the clock. Wait, I'm doing my clinical thing. I'm doing clock management.
Just I have some things I wanted to share. So for those of you who are watching, we're going to go a little bit over because I just need to share what the Lord has placed on my heart to share. But I really, really want to thank you because, you know, you and I know that when I asked you to be on tonight, we didn't know what the topic was going to be. I did not know what the topic was going to be. I never know what the topic was going to be until the Lord gives it to me.
Mhm.
So I'm just glad that it was this topic tonight and it was you as the guest because you added something that there's no way that I could have planned this any better than the Lord produced this. And so thank you so much.
Well, thank you. I have one question of you. You mentioned South Carolina. What's your South Carolina connection?
My mom's from South Carolina. She's from a little town called Pickens.
Well, my mom's from Dillon.
Really?
Yeah,
I know Dylan. In fact,
yeah.
Scipio is actually from his family is from Darlington.
Okay.
So
So
yeah,
there you go.
I'm yeah, my mom's from my sister still lives there. I got a bunch of family there in South Carolina.
Okay.
My father's from North Carolina.
Okay.
He was born in Kinston, North Carolina.
Wow.
So
I used to park when I was working in downtown in a parking lot on 6th Avenue and 29th Street. And it was a black parking attendant. He says, so who from your family's from South Carolina? I
hmm,
said, where'd you get that? He says, because there's certain words, only you'll pronounce them that way.
exactly, exactly. And nobody else. That's right. You got to. Nobody else out of us. That's good. That's good. Yeah. So yeah, mom's from South Carolina. In fact, one of the local preachers in New York, Reverend James Kilgore.
Sure, yeah.
Kilgore's parents from the same place my mom is from.
I didn't realize. I'm gonna have to tease him.
Not.
I got to say, I got to send. I was gonna go to bed. Now I got to stand up and send him an email.
Yeah,
Come on.
yeah, yeah. And I don't know if you remember Reverend Benny Wright.
Yeah,
Reverend Benny Wright was from Pickens also, but he's from
really.
like up in the mountains. He like way up in the mountain area.
Okay.
He's from Pickens as well. And so when we found that out, it was like, get out of here. So we talked and Kilgore and I keep saying we're gonna go down together because his cousin used to work with my sister.
No.
The town is that
Small world.
the
Small
town is
world.
really that everybody knows, especially if you've been around a while. Now they got a new influx of people coming in.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
but my sister's been living there 40 years. So,
Wow.
I mean, when you talk about when I was growing up, when I would go down every summer, everybody knew everybody. There was
Mm-hmm.
not a black person in town that we didn't know. In fact,
Mm-hmm.
when we got to the town next to Pickens, everybody in Pickens knew we were there
Okay.
because the word
Okay.
we had no cell phone.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Word got out, and everybody knew we were coming into town.
Okay.
So that's that little small town called Pickens. And so
Well, again, thank you for having me on.
so hold on for a
It's
second. Just don't hang up. Let me just share with
okay.
you what I need to share, and then we're gonna go, right? I
Okay.
just want you, did you notice, we didn't talk about it a lot, but did you notice that the Lord has one leader at a time? It was after Moses was dead that he spoke
Mm-hmm.
to Joshua. And while
Mm-hmm.
Moses was alive, he was the leader and the only one that the Lord spoke with.
Mm-hmm.
Is not a God of confusion. He made sure that there was no misunderstanding among the Israelites that Moses is now gone. His leadership
Mm-hmm.
is over, and Joshua is now the leader. The Lord
Mm-hmm.
told Joshua what he needed to do to achieve the success Moses was unable to complete. The Lord
Mm-hmm.
didn't tell Joshua anything that he didn't already know. Joshua was reminded of the instructions Moses communicated him, but now God himself is sharing those same things with him, assuring him that he would be successful if he followed and did as he was being instructed.
Mm-hmm.
Exemplary leaderships comes with choices. Just because we know what we're supposed to do, even if we are the one given the instruction, does not guarantee that we will do it. Like the flight attendant in the story that I shared in my article,
Mm-hmm.
like Moses, we have our instructions and we know what's expected of us. But
Mm-hmm.
it's not up to us, or excuse me, I just put it this way, it is up to us
Mm-hmm.
to follow those instructions and to act accordingly. Joshua guided the Israelites into the promised land through prudent decision making and adherence to divine guidance. We can be like the flight attendant or like Moses, or we can be like Joshua. We have our instructions and we know what's expected of us, but
Mm-hmm.
it's up to us to be exemplary leaders. Reverend Dr. Ashley, I tip my hat to you tonight. You shared with me, with us, that we are in a particular place. We are here and we are being developed as leaders. If that is not an example, your being here tonight is an example for me because you told me that you're having a procedure tomorrow, but you're here.
Mm-hmm.
Exemplary leadership. I don't know what else I can say about that except that I'm glad that you're here because your being here is an example, a living example of what it means to be an exemplary leader. You gave me your word, and that was it. You have blessed us tonight in a mighty way. You brought all your tools to the table, dropped seeds of wisdom everywhere. I hope the family didn't miss any of them because I picked up a whole lot of stuff. I got a whole page of all kinds of things that you shared with me. And one thing has been made very clear to me. You are not only a professional in your pastoral role and as a psychoanalyst, but you also are a great inspiration, helping others self actualize to be the best that they can be, that they have within them, so that they too can become exemplary leaders. externally. What's going on internally now shows up externally. And thank you, my brother. The Matters of Faith family thanks you.
Thank you.
Now,
Thank
this
you.
is your second visit with us. First was December 6, 2021. We talked about peace in the storm. And Sister
Oh, okay.
Spivey, if you remember, Sister Lynn Spivey of the NAACP was my other guest.
Okay.
Okay, so now you got to do me a favor. You got to plan on coming back. Not 3 years from now, but
Okay. Okay.
check your calendar. Give me
Well, well, now that you said South Carolina roots, I mean, hey,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I feel obligated now.
I appreciate that. Yeah, give me a day. We'll make it happen, and we can still,
Okay.
we'll come up with a topic. Now, please
Okay.
don't forget our sponsors and advertisers. The JLR company, J. Lawrence R Consulting LLC. As you know, those are my companies for all your church financial needs. Just call 718-328-8096 or email us at jlawrenr@jlr.llc. It's not about the castle. It's about the kingdom. Matters of Faith, the book. I've been talking about it, but this is the book. If you don't have a copy, you got to get a copy. Make sure you get it because it is my first book, but I got at least 10 more in me that I've got to get out. But you can get the book by using my Cash App, Matters of Faith, $ Matters of Faith. The book is $24.15, which covers shipping and handling, or you can get it as an ebook. Now, it's not on Amazon. Sorry about that. But it's at Smashwords,
Hmm.
www.smashwords.com/books/view/993177. The ebook comes, you can do it, and that way there's no shipping and no handling. Better Mag Magazine, www.abettermag.com. A 2-year subscription is only $27.50. Now, this organization, this business, John J. Fox and Sons Funeral Services, they're professional, they're compassionate, and they're family friendly. And they've been serving the Bronx community for over 125 years. You want quality, good service? Call them 718-733-9114. And please don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this Matters of Faith YouTube channel. Telephone, text, email, message, any way you do it, but tell a friend to join us regularly on Monday nights for the Matters of Faith radio show. We are now live on Matters of Faith, the YouTube channel. We also drop each episode on our Matters of Faith and J. Lauren Russell's Facebook groups. So please, ma'am, please, sir, subscribe, like, and share this Matters of Faith YouTube channel, and make sure that you don't miss a single episode of Matters of Faith because you did not subscribe, like, and share the Matters of Faith YouTube channel. So on behalf of my guest, Reverend Dr. Willard Ashley Sr., and myself, we need you to be exemplary leaders. Only the Lord knows what he will do through you when you follow his directives. Remember to join us next Monday night at the same time in the same place. And if no one has told you this today, let me be the first to say that I love you, and there's absolutely nothing that you can do about it, so get used to it. Now, the Lord bless you, the Lord keep you, the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Now, to all my brothers and sisters, good night and God bless.